Nearly every country in the world is in debt. Did you know that the United States today holds more than $38 trillion in debt? That the European Union carries around $14 trillion? That Japan is close to $9 trillion in debt? Industrial giants, export powerhouses, all of them are in debt. And inevitably, one question comes to mind. If everyone is in debt, who is really the creditor? This is the historic talk, where power and history intersect. And the first thing we learn here is this. Debt doesn't usually work the way we think it does. Debt isn't just a burden. It's actually the foundation on which the modern world is built. Wars, crises, economic booms and collapses, all of them stand on this structure. And as we follow the trail of debt, we run into an unusual truth. The world isn't really in debt to someone else. It's in debt to itself. But that doesn't mean everyone benefits equally. Today, the world carries more than $315 trillion in total debt. That's roughly 3 times the size of the global economy. So how did we end up here? To understand that, we have to go back even further than credit cards and banks. The idea of national debt didn't emerge in financial institutions, but on the battlefield. In 1694, England was at war with France and had exhausted its resources. The king turned to merchants. "Give me money now," he said, "and I'll repay you in the future, with interest." To formalize this simple agreement, the Bank of England was created, and for the first time in history, a state began spending money it did not yet have. In return, lenders received something incredibly valuable, the promise of the state. A promise that could be bought, sold, and transferred. That's how government bonds were born. France adopted the idea, the Netherlands advanced it, and the United States carried out its revolution with it. Debt was no longer a weakness. It became a sign of power. If you could borrow, you were trusted, and if you were trusted, you could rule. Empires once conquered land to seize gold. Now they issue bonds to collect interest. The battlefield changed. Maps were replaced by balance sheets. Today, debt has become the common language of the world. The United States is in debt. Japan is in debt. Every country is in debt. But at the same time, everyone is also a creditor. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, even ordinary people. Through our taxes, savings, and retirement systems, we've all become part of this cycle. Take the United States, for example. Most of its debt isn't owed to foreign countries, but to its own citizens and institutions. American banks buy the bonds. The Fed buys them. Interest flows into American pension funds. The debt is real, but very often the creditor is someone inside the same system. The money just keeps circulating internally. And this isn't unique to America. Countries lend to one another while borrowing from each other at the same time. Developed nations extend credit to developing ones. Developing nations then invest their earned foreign currency back into Western economies. Everyone is holding everyone else's hand. This system is like a table where everyone has to keep sitting for it to survive. No one wants to stand up, and no one should. The most powerful players at this table are the markets, funds, central banks, and major institutions managing trillions of dollars. They decide which countries can borrow cheaply and which will pay the price. When confidence disappears, it's not just numbers that change. Lives do. Central banks act like the balancing board of this system. When they buy bonds, they create money. One party's debt becomes another's asset. Every unit of currency in circulation mirrors a debt written somewhere else. There isn't a single debt-free currency. And perhaps the most important truth of all, none of these debts were ever designed to be fully repaid. Governments don't plan to eliminate their debt. They roll it over. New debt replaces old debt. What really matters is that interest keeps being paid and confidence remains intact. Old debt steps aside for the new. This isn't a conspiracy. You already know this is how the system works. The United States will never fully pay off its debt, neither will Japan, because if they did, the structure that serves as the safest foundation of the global financial system would disappear. If government bonds vanished, the system would collapse. That's why debt isn't reduced, it's maintained. But this system has a cost. Interest payments aren't distributed equally. Money flows upward, from workers and taxpayers to those who hold the debt. That's why debt isn't just a transfer between countries, it's a transfer between classes. And at the very top, there isn't a single villain. Not China, not Wall Street, not the IMF. They're all part of the system, and so are we. Debt is no longer just a burden, it has become money itself. But there's one thing that should never be forgotten. Debt is, at its core, a promise, and no promise lasts forever. Sooner or later, one way or another, it comes to an end. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History holds the answers. I'll bring you what you're looking for.